How bad can America get? Uncle Prepper here, broadcasting to you from the bunker. Back in 1979, 35 years ago, my family and I were pondering that very question. How bad can it get? And much like today, the horizon was looming with clouds of doom and gloom. There were those who thought that America was finished. For example, I remember personally talking to individuals who believed that they would never collect 1 red cent of Social Security. And they bitterly reflected to me at the time on how they already paid into the system all of their lives. Well, all of those individuals not only collected, but in fact went on to collect hundreds of thousands of dollars in Medicare and SSI benefits, right on up until they were shoveled into their grave. In fact, they collected a sum which far exceeded the amount that they paid in. Back in the 70s, people were horrified when the national debt was less than $1 trillion. They are again horrified today that the debt has now reached 17 trillion and rising. But what if you were able to peer into the future and see that 35 years from now the debt will actually reach 17 quadrillion? I'm not suggesting that this is what shall happen precisely. But what I'm saying is a much higher national debt level is possible. And the system might not collapse just yet, and not for many years to come. Just look at the following numbers. This chart is a chart of numbers which most people are not used to seeing. The names of large numbers. Now, I'll scroll down here. And of course there's a million, a billion, a trillion. Let me see if I can adjust this a little bit. I hope you can see this. There's a trillion. There's a quadrillion, quintillion. That's a sexy sounding number. Sextillion. And on the numbers go. So, my point is, numbers are numbers. So after looking at the chart, I pose an economic question, namely, is it numbers of and by themselves, or is something more needed to cause a massive economic collapse, which ends an empire such as ancient Rome or modern America? To help answer this question, please read and consider the following passage, written by Benjamin Franklin describing his experience as a young man when he entered Philadelphia in 1723. And take note of how much he paid for bread at the time. Now, I don't think you'll be able to see it here, and I won't be able to focus it for you to read the whole account. But if you go ahead and Google Benjamin Franklin enters Philadelphia in 1723, or use the link I provide in the description of this video, you can read the account. So go ahead and pause the video now. I will also take a minute here and try to focus in on the relevant part of the passage. So that's right here. And I don't think you're going to be able to read it with my setup here. But I'll go ahead and even read the relevant part. It's very interesting to read the entire account, but here's the relevant part. Benjamin Franklin says, "When I walked up the street, gazing about till near the market house, I met a boy with bread. I had made many a meal on bread, and inquiring where he got it, I went immediately to the baker's he directed me to, in 2nd Street, and asked for the brisket. Intending such as we had in Boston. But they, it seems, were not made in Philadelphia. Then I asked for a 3-penny loaf and was told they had none such. So not considering or knowing the difference of money and the greater cheapness nor the names of his bread, I made him give me 3 pennies worth of any sort. He gave me accordingly 3 great puffy rolls. I was surprised at the quantity, but took it, and having no room in my pockets, walked off with a roll under each arm and eating the other. So, Benjamin Franklin, at that time, bought a loaf of bread, 1 loaf, for a penny. Now, think about that just for a minute. And after reading the passage and thinking about it, you can see back then a penny was a meaningful amount. Currently, a penny seems like a paltry sum. But time has proven that a penny is really just a number, hasn't it? And the value of numbers fluctuates. Bread now costs an average of 300 pennies per loaf, give or take 100 pennies. So what do we learn from this? We learn that the value of money fluctuates. And if we cannot grasp this basic fact, i.e. the value of money fluctuates, we shall never understand the complexities of a superpower's economy. Bread is no longer a penny per loaf, right? It has gone up in price despite the fact that modern farmers produce massive amounts of whole grains. Flour mills are far more efficient, and bakeries mass-produce bread in ways Ben Franklin's bread baker never even dreamed of. Yet despite all of this advancement, the price of bread is 400% higher in nominal terms. Could the price of bread rise another 400%? Could the national debt rise another 400% and America still not collapse? I leave you to ponder those questions. More on this subject later. Back to our original question. How bad can America get? Back in the 70s, I remember a good number of people who thought it was only a matter of time before America and the USSR would engage in a nuclear war. Our neighbor, who was the sheriff, had a 2-year stockpile of supplies stored inside of a fallout shelter as a precaution. My family was also set up to survive a worldwide catastrophe and continue on afterward, indefinitely. My father was a member of the John Birch Society, and he was totally convinced that it was only a matter of time before America was turned into a police state. Now, I'm not implying that my dad was wrong, but let's gain some perspective and remember what he and many others posited back in 1979, 35 years ago. That it took a lot longer than they ever imagined. So how bad did America get? A few years later, it actually got better. At least it felt better. And it really didn't get better. Why? The explanation will take some time, so more on that later. You may not know yet the real reason why it felt better back in the 80s, right on up until 2006, or why it feels bad now. But you and I do perceive a difference. Back then, the economy could have gotten worse, much worse, and or a nuclear war could have happened, but it didn't. That doesn't mean that the economic problems were fixed for the long run. But what happened back then was America did not end at the time and in the manner which some had predicted. The gold and silver bugs, for example, mispredicted the future. Gold and silver went up, but then they went back down, way down. and a lot of good people got burned. More on this later. So in part 2 of this video series, How Bad Can America Get? We'll delve a little deeper into that question and examine it from some other perspectives. So stay tuned for the next video.